The outsider. The gleaming halls of the Galactic Academy of Sciences hummed with an otherworldly energy as students from across the cosmos hurried to their classes. Amidst the sea of tentacles, scales, and iridescent skin, one figure stood out like a sore thumb. Jack Harper, the only human aboard the massive space station. Jack's weathered boots echoed against the polished floor as he made his way to the cafeteria, his broad shoulders and scarred hands a testament to a life far removed from the academic pursuits of his alien classmates. At 35, he was easily twice the age of most students, and his presence at the academy was the result of a complex web of political maneuvering and a desperate need for humanity to secure a foothold in galactic affairs. As he entered the bustling cafeteria, a hush fell over the room. Hundreds of eyes, some multifaceted, others bioluminescent, turned to stare at the human. Jack ignored them, making his way to the food synthesizers with practiced nonchalance. He'd faced down plasma cannons and xenomorphs. A few stares weren't going to rattle him. Well, if it isn't the primitive, a silky voice crooned from behind him. Jack didn't need to turn to know it was Zexalia, a Vexari student whose 6 arms were currently folded across her chest in a display of smug superiority. Jack punched in his meal code, watching as the synthesizer whirred to life. "Good morning to you too, Zexalia," he said, his voice gruff but steady. The Vexari's antennae twitched in annoyance at his lack of reaction. "I heard you barely passed Professor Krill's xenobiology exam. Tell me, was it difficult to comprehend with that tiny mammalian brain of yours?" A few snickers echoed from the growing crowd of onlookers. Jack grabbed his tray of synthesized nutrients, turning to face Zexalia with a wry smile. "Well, considering I've personally encountered more alien species in combat than most of you have studied in textbooks, I'd say I did all right." Zexalia's violet eyes narrowed. "Combat. Always violence with you humans. It's a wonder they even allowed your kind into the academy." Jack stepped closer, his voice low enough that only Zexalia could hear. "And it's a wonder that with all your supposed intelligence, you haven't figured out that provoking an ex-mercenary might not be the smartest move." For a moment, fear flickered across Zexalia's features before she regained her composure. "Threats now. How typical. You'll never belong here, human. You're nothing but a relic of a species clinging to relevance." Jack brushed past her, heading for an empty table. "Better a relic than a bully," he called over his shoulder, leaving Zexalia seething in his wake. As he sat down, Jack couldn't help but reflect on the circumstances that had brought him here. Earth, still recovering from the ravages of climate change and resource wars, had finally achieved faster-than-light travel. But by the time humanity reached the stars, they found a galactic community that had long since established itself, with humanity relegated to the fringes. The Galactic Council had grudgingly allowed a handful of human students to attend their prestigious academies, more as a political gesture than out of any real desire for integration. Jack, with his unique background, had been an unexpected choice. A former mercenary turned diplomat, sent to learn, and to prove that humans could contribute to galactic society. Lost in thought, Jack almost missed the small figure that slid into the seat across from him. He looked up to see Rax, a young Xynthan whose gelatinous body shimmered with neural patterns. That was impressive. Rax burbled, his translator converting the liquid sounds into comprehensible speech. Most students wouldn't dare stand up to Zexalia. Jack shrugged, poking at his synthesized meal. "I've faced worse than an oversized insect with an attitude problem." Rax's body rippled with what Jack had come to recognize as laughter. "Perhaps, but Zexalia's family has connections. She's not used to being challenged." "Well, she'd better get used to it," Jack muttered. "I didn't come here to be pushed around." Rax's neural patterns swirled thoughtfully. "Why did you come here, Jack Harper? You're different from the other humans we've encountered." Jack paused, considering his words carefully. "I came because humanity needs to find its place out here, and because I've seen enough conflict to know that understanding is better than fighting." "An ex-warrior seeking peace," Rax mused. Fascinating. You know, there's a growing number of students who are curious about humans, about Earth. Perhaps you cold. Rax's words were cut short as a commotion erupted across the cafeteria. Jack turned to see a group of Krovac students, hulking reptilians known for their aggressive tendencies, surrounding a smaller Illyrian student. The Illyrian's bioluminescent skin was pulsing rapidly, a clear sign of distress. "Looks like Zexalia isn't the only bully around here," Jack growled, rising from his seat. Rax's body trembled. "Jack, don't. The Krovac are dangerous. They're not like Zexalia. They'll—" But Jack was already moving, years of combat experience guiding his steps as he approached the confrontation. He could hear the lead Krovac's guttural threats, could see the fear in the Illyrian's multifaceted eyes. "Is there a problem here?" Jack's voice cut through the tension, drawing the attention of the Krovac. The leader, a scared behemoth named Grok, turned to face him, yellow eyes gleaming with malice. "This doesn't concern you, human," Grok snarled, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Walk away while you still can." Jack stood his ground, acutely aware of the dozens of eyes now watching the confrontation. This was more than just a petty bullying incident. It was a pivotal moment. How he handled this would set the tone for his entire tenure at the academy. "I'm making it my concern," Jack replied, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Let the Illyrian go, and we can all get back to our meals." Grok's scales bristled, and he took a menacing step toward Jack. "You dare give me orders? Primitive. I'll crush you like the insect you are." As Grok's massive fist swung toward him, Jack's combat instincts kicked in. He ducked under the blow, using Grok's momentum against him to send the Krovac stumbling into his companions. The cafeteria erupted into chaos as students scrambled to get out of the way. Jack positioned himself between the Krovac and the Illyrian student, his eyes never leaving Grok. "Last chance," he warned. "Walk away." Grok roared in fury, charging at Jack with the full force of his reptilian bulk. But Jack was ready. Years of facing down alien threats had honed his reflexes to a razor's edge. He sidestepped at the last moment, using a simple but effective takedown maneuver to send Grok crashing to the floor. Before the other Krovac could react, Jack had Grok pinned, one arm twisted behind his back in a hold that even the reptilian's superior strength couldn't break. The cafeteria fell silent, all eyes fixed on the human who had just taken down one of the most feared students in the academy. "Listen carefully," Jack said, his voice carrying in the hushed room. "I don't want trouble. I'm here to learn, just like everyone else. But if you think you can prey on those weaker than you, if you think your size or your species makes you superior, think again." He released Grok, stepping back as the Krovac struggled to his feet, nursing his injured pride more than any physical wounds. Jack surveyed the stunned crowd, noting the mix of fear, awe, and curiosity on their alien faces. "That goes for all of you," he continued. "Humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but we fought our way through our own history. We know a thing or two about overcoming adversity. I'm not here to fight, but I won't stand by and watch others be victimized. We're supposed to be the brightest minds in the galaxy. Let's start acting like it." As Jack turned to leave, he caught sight of Zexalia watching from the back of the crowd, her expression unreadable. Rax hurried to his side, his gelatinous body quivering with excitement. "That was unprecedented," Rax burbled. "No one has ever stood up to the Krovac like that." Jack sighed, the adrenaline of the confrontation fading. "Yeah, well, someone had to. Come on, let's get out of here before security shows up." As they exited the cafeteria, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. He had come to the Galactic Academy to build bridges, to show that humanity had more to offer than just its capacity for violence. But in doing so, he had inadvertently thrown down a gauntlet. The halls of the academy suddenly seemed charged with possibility and danger. Jack Harper, ex-mercenary and reluctant diplomat, had made his presence known. Now he would have to navigate the complex web of alien politics, ancient rivalries, and academic challenges that lay ahead. One thing was certain: life at the Galactic Academy would never be the same. Rising tensions. In the days following the cafeteria incident, Jack Harper found himself at the center of a storm he hadn't anticipated. Word of his confrontation with Grok spread through the Galactic Academy like wildfire, morphing and growing with each retelling. By the end of the week, half the student body believed he had single-handedly defeated an entire Krovak war party. As Jack made his way to his advanced xenopolitics class, he could feel the weight of stares following him. Some were filled with awe, others with thinly veiled hostility. He had wanted to prove that humans belonged at the academy, but not like this. "Quite the celebrity, aren't you?" A familiar voice called out. Jack turned to see Professor Lixera, his xenopolitics instructor, approaching. The Quarian's tentacled face was unreadable, but there was a hint of amusement in her multifaceted eyes. "Not by choice, Professor," Jack replied, falling into step beside her. Lixera's tentacles rippled in what Jack had come to recognize as a shrug. "Choices, Mr. Harper, have a way of making themselves. Come, walk with me." As they navigated the winding corridors of the academy, Lixera spoke in low tones. "Your actions have not gone unnoticed by the faculty. Some are impressed by your proactive approach to conflict resolution. Others are concerned about the precedent it sets." Jack frowned. "I didn't start that fight, Professor. I was just defending the defenseless." Lixera finished for him. "A noble sentiment, but one that carries its own dangers. The Galactic Council allowed humans into our academies as a gesture of goodwill, but many still view your species with suspicion. Your display of martial prowess has only heightened those concerns." They paused at a viewport, the vast expanse of space stretching out before them. Jack could see the shimmering force field that protected the academy, a stark reminder of the hostile universe that lay beyond. "What would you have had me do?" Jack asked, his frustration evident. "Stand by and watch as Grok terrorized that student." Lixera's eyes swirled with patterns that Jack couldn't quite decipher. "Perhaps not. But there are more subtle ways to affect change, Mr. Harper. Ways that don't involve physical confrontation." Before Jack could respond, a commotion down the hall caught their attention. A group of students had gathered, their voices raised in argument. At the center of the group, Jack spotted Rax, his gelatinous body pulsing rapidly in distress. "Excuse me, Professor," Jack said, already moving towards the crowd. Lixera watched him go, her expression unreadable. As Jack approached, he could make out the heated exchange. A Vexari student, not Zexalia, but one of her cronies, was looming over Rax, all 6 arms gesticulating wildly. "You dare suggest that humans should have equal standing in the galactic community," the Vexari was saying, his voice dripping with disdain. "They're barely out of their own solar system. They have no place here among the advanced races." Rax's neural patterns were swirling chaotically. "But that's precisely why we should embrace them. Their perspective could offer fresh insights, new ways off." "Fresh insights?" the Vexari scoffed. "What could a species that still wages war on itself possibly teach us?" Jack stepped forward, his presence immediately silencing the group. "How about resilience?" he said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "Or adaptability? You might be surprised at what humans can bring to the table." The Vexari's antennae twitched in agitation. "Ah, the warrior himself. Come to solve another problem with your fists." Jack felt the familiar surge of anger but forced it down. Lixera's words echoed in his mind. There were other ways to fight this battle. "Actually," Jack said, "I came to invite you all to a debate. Rax and I are starting a discussion group on interspecies cooperation. We'd love to hear your perspective on why humans don't belong here. Who knows? You might even change our minds." The Vexari blinked, clearly thrown off balance by the unexpected invitation. The other students murmured among themselves, curiosity piqued. A debate. Rax burbled, his body shimmering with excitement. Yes, that's an excellent idea. We could hold it in the Grand Lecture Hall. Invite students and faculty alike. The Vexary's eyes narrowed. But Jack could see the wheels turning in his mind. A public forum would give him the chance to air his grievances, to potentially sway others to his point of view, and refusing would make him look weak. Very well, the Vexary said finally. 1 week from today, we'll see how well your human rhetoric stands up to real galactic discourse. As the crowd dispersed, Rax oozed closer to Jack, his neural patterns swirling with a mix of gratitude and concern. That was unexpected, he said. But are you sure about this, Jack? A public debate could backfire spectacularly. Jack nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. It's a risk we have to take, Rax. We can't change minds by force. We need to show them that humans are more than just soldiers or savages, that we have ideas worth listening to. As they walked to class, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he had just set something monumental in motion. The debate would be a turning point, not just for him, but for humanity's place in the galaxy. Over the next week, news of the upcoming debate spread throughout the academy. What had started as a simple discussion group quickly evolved into a major event, with students from all species weighing in on the human question. Jack spent every spare moment preparing, poring over galactic history texts and political treatises. He reached out to his contacts back on Earth, gathering data on humanity's scientific advancements, cultural achievements, and diplomatic efforts. Rax proved to be an invaluable ally, his vast knowledge of alien cultures helping Jack anticipate and counter potential arguments. Together, they built a case for humanity's inclusion in galactic affairs that was both logical and passionate. But not everyone was supportive of their efforts. Jack began to notice a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the academy. Whispered conversations would stop when he entered a room. Some of his alien classmates, who had been cautiously friendly before, now avoided eye contact in the halls. The tension came to a head 3 days before the debate. Jack was working late in one of the Academy's research labs, analyzing data on interspecies diplomatic incidents, when the door slid open behind him. Burning the midnight oil, Harper. Zaxalia's voice dripped with false sweetness. Jack turned to see her flanked by 2 other Vexari students, their expressions hostile. "Just doing my homework," Jack replied evenly, slowly reaching for the neural link device on the nearby table. If things went south, he wanted to be able to call for help. Zaxalia's antennae twitched in amusement. "How quaint. But I'm afraid all your studying won't make a difference. The outcome of this little debate is already decided." Jack's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, come now," Zaxalia purred, taking a step closer. "You didn't really think the Academy would allow a primitive species like yours to gain any real influence here, did you? This debate is nothing more than a farce, a way to publicly humiliate you and put humans in their place once and for all." Jack felt a chill run down his spine, but he kept his voice steady. "If you're so confident, why come here and tell me this? Afraid of a fair fight?" Zaxalia's eyes flashed dangerously. "Fair? There's nothing fair about your kind being here in the first place. You're a mistake, Harper, a political experiment that's about to be terminated." One of Zaxalia's companions moved to block the door, while the other began casually examining the delicate lab equipment. The threat was clear: back down, or things would get ugly. Jack's mind raced, evaluating his options. He could probably take them in a fight, but that would only prove their point about human violence. And if they damaged the lab in the process, he'd be blamed regardless of who started it. Instead, he took a deep breath and met Zaxalia's gaze. "You know, for an advanced species, you're remarkably afraid of a little competition. If humans are as primitive as you claim, why not let the debate happen? Surely your superior intellect will easily triumph over our feeble arguments." Zaxalia's antennae quivered with rage, but Jack could see the uncertainty in her eyes. He pressed on, his voice taking on a challenging tone. "Or is it that you're not as confident as you pretend to be? Maybe you're worried that if people actually listen to what we have to say, they might start to see humans differently. And then where would that leave you, Zexalia? Just another bully whose time has passed. For a moment, Jack thought he had pushed too far. Zexalia's hands clenched into fists, and her companions tensed, ready for action. But then, unexpectedly, she laughed. "Oh, Harper," she said, her voice filled with mock pity. "You really don't understand how things work here, do you? It doesn't matter what you say or how well you argue. The powers that be have already decided your fate. This debate is just the beginning of the end for humanity's galactic ambitions." With that, she turned to leave, her companions falling in behind her. At the door, she paused, looking back over her shoulder. "Enjoy your last few days of relevance, human. It's all downhill from here." As the door slid shut behind them, Jack slumped into his chair, his mind reeling. If what Zexalia said was true, then the debate was rigged from the start. But why go through the charade? What did the Academy, or the Galactic Council, hope to gain by publicly humiliating humanity? Jack's gaze fell on the data scrolling across his screen, the countless diplomatic incidents and cultural misunderstandings that had shaped galactic politics over the millennia. Somewhere in that vast tapestry of information, there had to be a key to understanding what was really going on. With renewed determination, Jack dove back into his research. If the deck was stacked against him, he would just have to find a way to change the game entirely. Humanity's future in the stars depended on it. As the night wore on, Jack's mind raced with possibilities and plans. The debate was no longer just about proving humanity's worth. It was about uncovering a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of galactic cooperation. And Jack Harper, ex-mercenary turned reluctant diplomat, was the only one who could stop it. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the future of the galaxy. All that remained was for Jack to find the evidence he needed and the courage to use it. As the first light of the alien sun began to filter through the lab's windows, Jack allowed himself a grim smile. If it was a fight they wanted, it was a fight they would get, but on his terms, and with the full force of human ingenuity behind him. The breaking point. The day of the debate arrived with an air of electric anticipation. The grand lecture hall of the Galactic Academy was packed to capacity, with students and faculty from every species jostling for position. Holographic displays flickered to life around the room, broadcasting the event to remote viewers across the station and beyond. Jack Harper stood at the edge of the stage, his heart pounding. The past 48 hours had been a blur of frantic research and clandestine meetings. If his suspicions were correct, this debate was about far more than just humanity's place in the galaxy. "You ready for this?" Rax oozed up beside him, the Zynthen's neural pattern swirling with a mix of excitement and concern. Jack nodded, his jaw set with determination. "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember the plan." Rax's body shimmered in affirmation. "I've got the data packet ready to broadcast at your signal. But Jack, are you sure about this? If we're wrong, I'll have egg on my face and probably be expelled," Jack said with a grim smile. "But if we're right, we might just save the galaxy from itself." Before Rax could respond, a hush fell over the crowd. Professor Lixera glided onto the stage, her tentacles rippling with an air of gravitas. "Esteemed colleagues, honored guests," her voice resonated through the hall. "We gather today to debate one of the most pressing issues of our time, the role of humanity in galactic affairs. Let us approach this discussion with open minds and—" A commotion at the back of the hall cut her off. Jack craned his neck to see a group of official-looking aliens pushing their way through the crowd. His heart sank as he recognized the insignia on their uniforms. Galactic Council Security. Professor Lixera, the lead officer, a stern-faced droner, called out, "We have orders to shut down this debate immediately. There are concerns about potential security breaches and unauthorized dissemination of classified information." A murmur of confusion rippled through the audience. Jack caught Zexalia's eye across the stage. her antennae twitching with smug satisfaction. This was it, the moment of truth. Before anyone could stop him, Jack strode to the center of the stage, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all designations," he began, "what you're witnessing is not just the silencing of a debate. It's the culmination of a conspiracy that threatens the very foundation of galactic cooperation." The security officers started forward, but Jack held up a hand, his next words freezing them in their tracks. "Before you take another step, you should know that a data packet is currently being broadcast to every corner of this station and to key locations across the galaxy. In it is evidence of a plot orchestrated by certain members of the Galactic Council to systematically suppress emerging species, including but not limited to humanity." Gasps and exclamations echoed through the hall. Jack pressed on, his eyes scanning the crowd, gauging reactions. For centuries, the so-called advanced races have maintained their power by ensuring that younger species never get a real chance to compete. They've manipulated economies, sabotaged diplomatic efforts, and even engineered conflicts to keep emerging races in check. On cue, holographic displays around the room flickered to life, showing graphs, intercepted communications, and damning financial records. Jack silently thanked Rax for his impeccable timing. "But humanity isn't the only victim," Jack continued. "Dozens of species across the galaxy have been kept from reaching their full potential, all in the name of maintaining the status quo." The security officers looked to each other uncertainly, clearly unprepared for this turn of events. In the audience, Jack could see a mix of shock, anger, and dawning realization on alien faces. "I stand before you not just as a representative of humanity, but as a voice for all those who have been silenced and suppressed. We came to the stars seeking friendship, knowledge, and cooperation. Instead, we found a system rigged against us from the start." Jack's voice softened, taking on a note of passion that resonated through the hall. "But it doesn't have to be this way. Imagine a galaxy where every species, no matter how young or old, has a fair chance to contribute, where diversity is seen as a strength, not a threat, where we face the challenges of the universe together, drawing on the unique perspectives and abilities of all." He turned to face the security officers directly. "You can try to silence me, to shut down this debate, but the truth is already out there. The question now is, what are we going to do about it?" For a moment, the grand lecture hall was utterly silent. Then, from somewhere in the back, a slow clap began. It spread quickly, building to a thunderous applause that shook the very foundations of the academy. In the chaos that followed, Jack found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Students and faculty alike pressed forward, eager to examine the evidence for themselves. The security officers, clearly out of their depth, retreated to consult with their superiors. Rax oozed up beside Jack, his neural patterns pulsing with a mix of awe and concern. "That was intense," the Zynthan burbled. "What happens now?" Jack ran a hand through his hair, suddenly feeling the weight of the past few days. Now we wait for the other shoe to drop. This isn't over by a long shot." As if on cue, a hush fell over the crowd. Jack turned to see a holographic projection materializing at the center of the stage. The beam that appeared was unlike any Jack had seen before, a swirling mass of energy barely contained within a humanoid form. "Greetings, citizens of the galaxy," the beam's voice resonated with an otherworldly power. "I am Zorax, High Counselor of the Galactic Confederation. In light of the revelations brought forth today, I am hereby declaring an emergency session of the Council. Representatives from all species, including those previously excluded, are summoned to the Nexus Station to address these allegations and chart a new course for our shared future." The hologram's gaze seemed to fix directly on Jack. "Mr. Harper, as the catalyst for these events, your presence is specifically requested. A ship will be dispatched to bring you to the Nexus immediately." With that, the projection vanished, leaving the hall in stunned silence. Jack felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Professor Lixera. her tentacled face unreadable. "Well, Mr. Harper," she said softly, "it seems you've managed to upend millennia of galactic politics in a single day. I do hope you're prepared for what comes next." Jack swallowed hard, the full weight of what he'd done finally sinking in. He had wanted to prove humanity's worth, to secure their place among the stars. Instead, he had potentially rewritten the entire balance of power in the galaxy. As word of the emergency council session spread, the grand lecture hall erupted into a frenzy of activity. Students and faculty alike were frantically contacting their homeworlds, sharing the news, and speculating on what it might mean for their species. Zexalia pushed her way through the crowd, her earlier smugness replaced by a mix of anger and grudging respect. "This isn't over, Harper," she hissed. "You may have won this battle, but the war for galactic supremacy is far from decided." Jack met her gaze steadily. "That's where you're wrong, Zexalia. This was never about supremacy. It's about equality, about giving every species a fair chance to contribute. Maybe it's time you considered what your people could achieve if they focused on cooperation instead of domination." Before she could respond, Jack felt a tug at his sleeve. He looked down to see Rax, the Xinthan's body rippling with urgency. "Jack, we got a problem. I've been monitoring the station's communication channels, and there's chatter about a group of hardliners planning to prevent you from reaching the Nexus. They're saying you know too much, that you're too dangerous to be allowed to testify before the council." Jack's mind raced, evaluating options. He had anticipated resistance, but not this quickly or on this scale. "We need to move," he said, already heading for the exit. "Rax, can you access the station's security systems? We might need to take an unconventional route to the docking bay." As they made their way through the winding corridors of the Academy, Jack could feel the shift in the air. What had started as a simple debate had snowballed into a full-blown galactic crisis, and he was at the center of it all. They'd rounded a corner and nearly collided with a group of Krovac students, led by none other than Grok. For a moment, Jack tensed, ready for a fight. But to his surprise, Grok held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "We heard what happened in the hall," the reptilian rumbled. "About the council, the suppression of species. It changes things." Jack raised an eyebrow, wary but intrigued. "How so?" Grok's scales rippled in what might have been embarrassment. "The Krovac, we've always prided ourselves on our strength, our dominance. But if what you said is true, if we've been nothing more than pawns in some larger game." He trailed off, then straightened to his full, imposing height. "We want to help, to make things right." For a moment, Jack was speechless. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "Well, Grok, I think we might just have a job for you and your friends. How do you feel about running interference?" As they quickly hashed out a plan, Jack couldn't help but marvel at the strange twists of fate that had brought him to this point. He had come to the Galactic Academy to prove humanity's worth, to secure their place among the stars. Instead, he found himself at the forefront of a movement that could reshape the very fabric of galactic society. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. There would be those who would stop at nothing to maintain the old order, to keep emerging species in their place. But for the first time since he'd set foot on the Academy station, Jack felt a glimmer of real hope. As they made their final preparations to make a break for the docking bay, Jack turned to his unlikely group of allies. Rax, Grok, and a handful of other students from various species who had joined their cause. "Whatever happens next," he said, his voice firm with resolve, "remember this moment. Remember that when faced with the truth, we chose to stand together. That's the real strength of humanity, and of every species represented here. Not our technology, not our physical prowess, but our capacity to unite in the face of injustice." With nods of determination all around, they set off into the unknown. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Jack Harper, ex-mercenary turned reluctant diplomat, was ready to fight for it with every ounce of human ingenuity and determination he possessed. The race to the Nexus station, and to a new galactic order, had begun. Unexpected allies. The corridors of the Galactic Academy had become a labyrinth of danger and uncertainty. Jack Harper led his makeshift team through service tunnels and rarely used passageways, relying on Rax's ability to tap into the station's systems to avoid security patrols and potential ambushes. "We're approaching the auxiliary docking bay," Rax burbled, his gelatinous form pulsing with nervous energy. "But Jack, there's a problem. The bay's been locked down. Someone's overridden the security protocols." Jack cursed under his breath. They were so close to their goal, but the stakes kept rising. Any way to bypass it? Before Rax could respond, Grok stepped forward, his reptilian features set in a determined grimace. "Leave that to me and my team. We Krovac have ways of persuading machinery to cooperate." Jack raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "All right, but be careful. We don't want to alert the whole station to our presence." As Grok and his fellow Krovac moved ahead to deal with the locked bay, Jack turned to address the rest of the group. It was an odd assembly. Students from a dozen different species, each with their own reasons for joining this impromptu rebellion. Some sought justice, others adventure, and a few simply saw which way the wind was blowing and decided to get on the right side of history. "Listen up," Jack said, his voice low but intense. "Once we get that bay open, things are going to move fast. We need to secure a ship and get off this station before." A slow clap echoed through the corridor, cutting him off mid-sentence. Jack spun around to see Professor Lix-Era emerge from the shadows, her tentacled face unreadable. "Impressive, Mr. Harper," she said, her multifaceted eyes scanning the group. "I must say, when I encouraged you to find more subtle ways to effect change, this wasn't quite what I had in mind." The students tensed, ready for a fight, but Jack held up a hand to steady them. There was something in Lix-Era's tone, a hint of amusement. "Professor," Jack said cautiously, "I can explain." Lix-Era waved a tentacle dismissively. "Oh, I think you've done quite enough explaining for one day. Your little performance in the debate hall has thrown the entire galactic political structure into chaos. Quite a feat for a, how did Zexalia put it, a primitive species." Jack's mind raced, trying to gauge the professor's intentions. Was she here to stop them, to help, or was this all part of some larger game he couldn't yet see? "So what happens now?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. Lix-Era's tentacles rippled in what Jack had come to recognize as a smile. "Now, Mr. Harper, we make history. Did you really think you were the only one who saw the flaws in the current system? Some of us have been working for centuries to bring about change, but we needed a catalyst. Someone from outside the established power structures to shake things up." Realization dawned on Jack. "The debate, my admission to the academy, it was all part of your plan." "Let's call it a calculated risk," Lix-Era replied. "We provided the opportunity. You, Mr. Harper, provided the spark. And now," she gestured to the diverse group of students gathered around them, "now we have a fire." Before Jack could respond, Grok's voice boomed from down the corridor. "The bay is open, but we got company coming. Lots of it." Lix-Era's expression turned serious. "It seems our time for discussion has run out. Mr. Harper, are you ready to take the next step? To truly challenge the powers that be and fight for a more equitable galaxy?" Jack looked around at the faces of his unlikely allies. Rax, Grok, the other students who had put their trust in him. He thought of Earth, of humanity's long struggle to reach the stars, only to find the deck stacked against them. He thought of all the other species who had been held back, their potential squandered by a system designed to maintain the status quo. His jaw set with determination as he turned back to Lix-Era. "Professor, I've been ready my whole life. Let's do this." With a nod of approval, Lix-Era led the way into the docking bay. The scene that greeted them was one of controlled chaos. Grok and his Krovac teammates had indeed persuaded the bay doors to open, leaving a trail of sparking control panels in their wake. In the center of the bay sat a sleek, unmarked vessel, clearly not standard Academy issue. Our ride, I presume?" Jack asked, eyeing the ship appreciatively. Lixera's tentacles twitched in affirmation. "A ghost ship, untraceable and faster than anything the Academy's security forces can muster. It will get us to the Nexus station in time for the emergency council session." As they hurried toward the ship, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The sound of heavy footsteps and shouted orders echoed from the corridor they had just left. "Everyone aboard, now," Jack shouted, ushering the students up the ship's ramp. He paused at the base, turning to face the approaching security forces. Among them, he spotted Zexalia, her antennae quivering with rage. "Harper," she screamed over the din of the alarms. "You have no idea what you're doing. You'll doom us all." For a moment, Jack felt a pang of doubt. Was he really doing the right thing? Could one human, even with these unexpected allies, really hope to change a system that had stood for millennia? But then he remembered the evidence they had uncovered, the countless species whose potential had been stifled, the dream of a truly cooperative galactic community. His resolve hardened. "No, Zexalia," he called back. "For the first time, I know exactly what I'm doing. And so do they." He gestured to the diverse group of students now watching from the ship's ramp, their faces a mix of fear and determination. With that, Jack turned and sprinted up the ramp. As soon as he was aboard, Lixera's tentacles flew over the control panel, and the ship's engines roared to life. The bay doors began to close, security forces rushing to stop them, but they were too late. With a burst of energy that pushed them all back into their seats, the ghost ship shot out of the docking bay and into the star-studded expanse of space. The Galactic Academy, with all its centuries of tradition and hidden agendas, fell away behind them. As the ship stabilized and the initial rush of adrenaline began to fade, Jack felt the weight of what they had just done settle over him. He turned to Lixera, who was calmly adjusting their course. "So, Professor," he said, a hint of his old wry humor creeping into his voice, "I don't suppose you have a lesson plan for overthrowing an intergalactic conspiracy and reshaping the political landscape of the known universe?" Lixera's eyes swirled with a mixture of amusement and gravity. "Mr. Harper, I believe we're all about to get an education in galactic politics that no textbook could ever provide. But first," she gestured to a holographic display that had sprung to life in the center of the ship's cabin, "we have some allies to contact and a strategy to formulate. The Nexus station awaits, and with it, the future of the galaxy." As the students gathered around the display, each offering insights from their own species and cultures, Jack felt a surge of hope. This disparate group, thrown together by circumstance and united by a vision of a more just galaxy, represented everything he had dreamed of when humanity first reached for the stars. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and opposition from those who would cling to the old ways. But as Jack looked at the determined faces around him, he knew that they had already achieved something remarkable. They had proven that cooperation across species lines wasn't just possible, it was powerful. The ghost ship streaked through the cosmos, carrying with it the seeds of revolution. And at its heart, Jack Harper, ex-mercenary, reluctant diplomat, and now the unlikely leader of a movement that could reshape the galaxy, prepared for the greatest challenge of his life. The Nexus station loomed in the distance, a massive structure that served as the seat of galactic governance. Within its halls, the fate of countless species would soon be decided. And Jack was determined to make sure that every voice, no matter how small or how new to the galactic stage, would be heard. As they approached the station, Jack couldn't help but smile. Humanity had come to the stars seeking its place in the cosmos. Instead, they had found a cause worth fighting for, and allies from across the galaxy ready to stand beside them. Whatever came next, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. Turning the tables. The Nexus station loomed before them, a colossal structure of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields that served as the heart of galactic governance. As their ghost ship approached, Jack Harper felt the weight of the moment settle upon his shoulders. Everything had led to this. The fate of humanity and countless other species hung in the balance. "We're being hailed," Rax announced, his gelatinous form rippling with nervous energy. Professor Lixera nodded to Jack. "This is your moment, Mr. Harper. Are you ready?" Jack took a deep breath, steeling himself. "As ready as I'll ever be." The ship's view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of a Drahner security officer. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted space. State your purpose immediately." Jack stepped forward, his voice clear and unwavering. "This is Jack Harper, human representative summoned by High Counselors or Orcs for the emergency session. We request immediate docking clearance." The Drahner's eyes narrowed. "We've received reports of a rogue group from the Galactic Academy. How do we know you are who you claim to be?" Before Jack could respond, the screen split and a new figure appeared. The swirling energy form of Zorax himself. "Let them pass." The High Counselor's voice resonated with authority. "I will vouch for their identity." The Drahner looked startled but quickly composed himself. "As you wish, High Counselor. Docking Bay 17 is cleared for your arrival." As the transmission ended, Jack turned to his companions, a mix of confusion and determination on his face. "Well, that was unexpected." Lixera's tentacles rippled thoughtfully. "It seems the High Counselor has plans of his own. Be on your guard, all of you. The real challenge begins now." The ghost ship glided into the massive docking bay, settling onto the polished floor with barely a whisper. As the ramp lowered, Jack led his diverse group of allies out into the cavernous space. They were immediately surrounded by a contingent of security officers, their weapons lowered but unmistakably present. "This way," a stern-faced Illyrian officer instructed, gesturing toward a nearby lift. "The council chambers await." As they were escorted through the winding corridors of the Nexus station, Jack couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale and diversity of the beings they passed. Representatives from hundreds of species hurried by, their features ranging from the familiar to the utterly alien. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. News of the impending session had clearly spread far and wide. Finally, they arrived at a set of towering doors, intricately carved with symbols representing every member species of the Galactic Confederation. The doors swung open silently, revealing a vast circular chamber beyond. The Galactic Council chamber was a sight to behold. Tiered seating rose in concentric circles around a central podium, each section filled with representatives from across the known universe. The ceiling was a dome of swirling energy, displaying a real-time map of the galaxy with pulsing lights indicating populated worlds. As Jack and his companions were led to a designated area near the central podium, he could feel the weight of countless eyes upon them. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some curious, others hostile. High Counselor Zorax materialized at the central podium, his energy form pulsing with barely contained power. "Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Confederation," his voice boomed, silencing the chamber instantly. "We gather here today to address allegations of a most serious nature. Allegations that, if true, strike at the very foundation of our union." Zorax's gaze swept the chamber before settling on Jack. "Mr. Harper, you have caused quite a stir. The floor is yours. Present your evidence, and let the council judge its merit." Jack stepped forward, his heart pounding but his resolve firm. He thought of Earth, of humanity's long struggle to reach the stars. He thought of Rax, Gruck, and all the other students who had risked everything to stand with him. He thought of the countless species whose potential had been stifled by a system designed to maintain the status quo. "Esteemed members of the council," Jack began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I stand before you not just as a representative of humanity, but as a voice for all those who have been silenced and suppressed." With a gesture, he activated the holographic displays he and his team had prepared. The chamber filled with scrolling data, intercepted communications, and damning financial records. "For centuries," Jack continued, "certain members of this council have manipulated galactic affairs to keep emerging species from reaching their full potential. They've engineered conflicts, sabotaged diplomatic efforts, and rigged economic systems, all to maintain their own power and prevent any real challenge to the established order. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the assembly. Jack pressed on, his voice gaining strength. But this isn't just about humanity. Dozens of species across the galaxy have been affected. The Zinthon, the Krovac, the Illyrians, all have had their growth stunted, their contributions to galactic society minimized. He turned, gesturing to his diverse group of allies. Look around you. In the span of a few days, we, students from species that have been taught to distrust and compete with each other, have come together. We've combined our strengths, shared our knowledge, and achieved what none of us could have done alone. This is the true potential of galactic cooperation. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, shouts of denial, cries of outrage, and murmurs of dawning realization. Zorax raised his hands, calling for order, but the energy in the room was palpable. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the din. "This is preposterous," Zexalia shouted, pushing her way to the front. "You can't possibly believe the ravings of this primitive. He's trying to destabilize everything we've built." Jack met her gaze calmly. "Is that really what you're afraid of, Zexalia? Or is it that you know, deep down, that the system you're defending is built on lies and oppression?" Before Zexalia could respond, another voice joined the fray. To Jack's surprise, it was Grok, the Krovac student who had once been his adversary. "I've seen the evidence," Grok rumbled, his reptilian features set in determination. "My people have long prided ourselves on our strength, but we've been nothing more than pawns in a larger game. It's time for a change." One by one, representatives from various species began to speak up, sharing their own experiences of suppression and manipulation. The tide of the chamber was turning, the truth spreading like wildfire. Zorax's energy form pulsed erratically, a sign of the intense emotions swirling within the High Counselor. "Order," he thundered, finally silencing the chamber. "These are grave accusations, with far-reaching implications. We cannot simply ignore them." Lixera interrupted, gliding forward. "Honorable Counselor, some of us have suspected these manipulations for centuries. We've worked in the shadows, trying to bring about change from within. But it's clear now that the time for incremental progress has passed. We need a complete restructuring of galactic governance." The chamber held its breath, all eyes on Zorax. The High Counselor's form shimmered, as if in deep contemplation. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with the weight of history. "In all my centuries," Zorax began, "I have never witnessed such a challenge to the established order. And yet, I cannot deny the evidence before us." He turned to Jack, his energy form pulsing with an unreadable emotion. "Mr. Harper, in seeking to secure humanity's place among the stars, you may have inadvertently saved us all from our own complacency." A hush fell over the chamber as Zorax continued. "I hereby propose an emergency measure. The formation of a new galactic confederation, one that truly represents all sentient species, regardless of their technological advancement or time among the stars." The chamber erupted once more, but this time with a growing swell of approval. Species that had long been at odds found themselves united in the vision of a more equitable galaxy. As the Council began the monumental task of reshaping galactic governance, Jack felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see Rax, Grok, and the rest of his unlikely team gathered around him. "We did it," Rax burbled, his neural patterns swirling with joy. Grok nodded, a toothy grin spreading across his reptilian features. "Not bad for a primitive, Harper." Jack laughed, the tension of the past few days finally releasing. "We all did it, together." As the celebration spread through the chamber, Jack found a quiet moment to look out at the star-filled expanse visible through the council chamber's massive windows. Somewhere out there was Earth, humanity's cradle, waiting to hear the outcome of this historic day. He thought of all the generations that had dreamed of this moment, of humanity finding its place among the stars. They had imagined first contact, interstellar war, or peaceful cooperation. But none had foreseen this, a human standing at the center of a galactic revolution, reshaping the very fabric of interstellar society. The path ahead would not be easy. Centuries of mistrust and competition couldn't be erased overnight. There would be resistance, setbacks, and new challenges to face. But for the first time, the galaxy was united in a common purpose: to build a future where every voice was heard, where every species had the chance to reach its full potential. As Jack turned back to join his friends and allies in the ongoing discussions, he couldn't help but smile. Humanity had come to the stars seeking its place in the cosmos. Instead, they had found something far greater, a cause worth fighting for, and a galaxy ready to evolve. The age of suppression and manipulation was over. A new era of true galactic cooperation was dawning. And Jack Harper, ex-mercenary turned reluctant diplomat, now found himself at the forefront of the greatest adventure in galactic history. The stars, once distant and forbidding, now beckoned with endless possibilities. The future, at last, was theirs to shape together.